So Simmers, welcome back to a brand new video. I am so excited for today's video, you have no idea. Because after months, literal months of work, I finally have another legacy tracker to share. I have worked on this one so much. When I asked you guys what challenge you would like me to make into a Notion tracker, there has been an overwhelming response with the Ultimate Decades Legacy Challenge. And I'm gonna fully admit, when I saw that, I got a little bit scared because I've seen this challenge and I know how extensive it is. And to be honest, in the beginning, I had absolutely no idea how to make a tracker for this. So I dug a little deeper and I did some research and I realized that at the time, I wasn't ready. However, then I actually ended up making the legacy track for the Llamas and Legends challenge, which actually taught me so much about Notion. So basically in January of 2025, I started working on this dashboard, and let me tell you, I have worked on this a lot because this challenge is incredibly complicated. It also has two different challenges that are basically merged into one. So I really wanted to make sure to give you guys a seamless experience of playing through this challenge and actually making sure that this Notion tracker is of help to you guys when you're playing through the challenge. So I've made sure to hopefully create an intuitive template that gives you all the information you need to play through this challenge without constantly having to switch between your game and Excel sheets and the rules and etc. I tried to make it an intuitive place where you would have all the information that is relevant to you throughout your playthrough at eye's glance. So now that I've said all of that and I've hopefully hyped you up for this template, let's actually dive into the Notion dashboard so that I can show you around. Before I do that, I would like to explain how to actually duplicate this template to your own workspace, because I've noticed on previous templates, a lot of people have the question that when they actually download the template or they get the link for my web shop, they realize they cannot edit it, and that is because you first need to duplicate it to your workspace. So let me show you that first, and then we're going to actually dive into the tour. If you've purchased the template on my shop, you will actually get a link that will lead you to this page. As you can see, it seems like you immediately have access to the templates. However, some of the buttons will be grayed out. That is because you first need to duplicate this template to your own workspace. You can do that by going into the top right corner, and there is a little button here with two squares that says duplicate. As soon as you click this, it's going to ask you to duplicate it to one of your Notion workspaces, which means that you do have to sign up with a Notion account. But if you're logged in with that Notion account in this browser, as soon as you click duplicate and you select your workspace, whichever you've named that, it will just duplicate it to that specific workspace. As soon as you have basically made a copy, you can start to edit this template to your heart's content, and you should be able to use all the buttons. If I immediately gave you access to this version of the template, you would be able to edit the source, meaning that everyone that downloads it after you will be able to see your changes and basically won't be able to use the template anymore. So I've added this additional step in between where you can duplicate it to your own workspace so that from that moment on, it is yours to work with and it is yours only. So now that you know how to duplicate this template to your own workspace, let's actually dive into how it works. And for the purpose of this video, I have created a couple of things so that I can more easily show you, but just know that if you get this template, there shouldn't be any sims or any journal entries in it. I've just made them so that you can see how easy it is to link everything. So for anyone who's familiar with the Ultimate Decades Challenge, it is a really extensive challenge. This challenge has many rules, many explanations, exceptions. Basically, there's lots of randomization in the challenge, and I wanted to make sure, that was my main goal with this template, that if you're gonna play through this challenge, that you should have this as your buddy during your playthrough. This should really feel like it's helping you as you're playing through every single day of this challenge. So I'm gonna walk you through the layout of this dashboard and explain along the way where you can find your information and how I envision that you use this template when you're playing the game. As you can see, when you get to the main dashboard, I tried to make a theme, obviously, to make it look pretty, so that it also fits with that sort of Ultimate Decades Challenge vibes. If you get here, there are a couple of things that you'll immediately notice. You have the rules over here, and there are two links because, like I've said earlier, this is basically a merge of two different challenges. The original Decades Challenge was written quite a while back, and then someone else actually made the Ultimate Decades version where they went all the way back to the 1300s and basically wrote the challenge from the 1300s up until the point where the original challenge starts, which is the 1900s. So if you're gonna play through this challenge, You're also going to notice that in some cases, I had to get a little bit creative with the setup because the two challenges actually use a slightly different approach to their rules and to their challenges, etc. So I try to combine it as intuitively as possible, but I can highly recommend, if you're ever in doubt what to do, always reflect back to the original rules from the creators, because I feel like that way it's going to help you a lot in figuring out how to play through something, because sometimes the original creator has just added more explanation that I have added to this template. You can also see that there's a lot of like little information boxes. Because this is such an extensive template, I wanted to make sure that there is always some information about what you can see, so that even if you are using this template and you might not have seen this video or you've seen it a while ago, that you still have that information link of what is it that I'm seeing here and how am I supposed to use it. For the rules, basically, I have written down what I've just explained, that this is a combination of two different challenges and that sometimes I had to get a little bit creative, and what the aim of this template is. Right below that, you see the core databases, and it specifically says no need to open. If you're a bit of a Notion nerd like I am, feel free to open these pages and see what I've done in terms of the setup, but just know that you don't have to go into these databases to play through the challenge. The whole point is that you can use this template without needing to know anything about Notion or databases, and that is just here to help you play through it as intuitively as possible. Right below that, we have two quick buttons, one for creating a sim and one for creating a journal entry. The journal entry is something that I've added. This is a personal addition. This is not part of the original challenge, but I realized that people that will enjoy playing the Ultimate Decades Legacy Challenge will probably also enjoy some thorough journaling, or probably like keeping track of their sims and what is happening. And it's people that enjoy in-depth storytelling, that enjoy long-term gameplay, that enjoy big legacy family trees. So I figured a journal entry or like a journal feature would be perfect to add to this dashboard. I will show you later how it exactly works, but just know that you can add a quick sim and a quick journal entry right from your home dashboard. Then in the middle column, you will see the dice board. This might seem familiar if you did get my Llamas and Legends legacy tracker, because I've basically just extended it with more dice than you can see over there, and it doesn't have the connected events to it. This is basically just to roll a number, but I wanted to add this in here so that if you're playing through the challenge, you don't have to find an external website where you can roll dice. Of course, if you actually own a dice set and you want to roll physical dice, be my guest, you can absolutely do that. With this challenge, every single time you roll a dice, you immediately implement the consequence of it into your challenge, so there's no need to keep like a record of what you've rolled in the past. This is mostly just to make this process easier for people that actually don't own a set of dice. That sounds a bit silly because most people will own a 6 dice, but a lot of people won't own a 4 or a 20 dice, so I've just tried to offer that as a service in this template as well. To keep this nice and tidy, it will basically show the rolls that you've done today, and anything that you've done in the past will be in the database, but you won't be able to see it here on your home dashboard. So it resets at midnight every day. Then, like I said, there is a lot of rules and exceptions and like little things in this challenge that you have to memorize throughout, and I've basically created a really big cheat sheet for that. This contains a lot of information, and also in some cases, these things actually change throughout the challenge. So this is one of the places you'll be able to find this information. I have also made sure to add this information on your actual decades pages, or like on your actual era pages, so to say. But I wanted to make sure that there is also a central hub where you can find this information and where you can find the context, because in the original challenge, these things are kind of sprinkled out throughout the rules, and it's really hard to have that central overview of what are all the things that I have to keep in mind when I'm playing through this challenge. So I wanted to make sure to give you all the information you need, give you all the tables and all the cheat sheets, so that it's more easy for you to play through the challenge, basically. With that, we've actually covered the middle column of the dashboard, and then off to the right, you can see the current decade or current age or current era, whatever you like to call it, that you're playing, so that you have easy access. The reason I have added this here is basically just like with playing a legacy challenge or current generation. This is the card that you're gonna be using the most. I will show you what it looks like in a little bit, but basically every single time that you start up your playthrough of the Ultimate Decades Challenge, you will open up this template right next to it, and you're gonna click on this card of the decade that you're currently playing, because I have really tried to make this card, like the specific decade card, your main companion in your playthrough so that you should be able to find everything you need on that card. Right below that, you can see your challenge progress. Obviously, this challenge is based off of you playing all the way from the 1300s to 2020. The thing is that every 4 sim days actually resemble a year. That means that there is a lot of calculation if you manually have to keep track of how many sims days you've played, and also at the same time remember what year you're playing, who you're playing with, what their life stats are, etc. That is why the original challenge came with a huge Excel sheet, and I've basically tried to translate that Excel sheet into a more intuitive version in Notion. And I like the idea of, if you're gonna play through every single sim day, I've basically done the calculation. If you're playing from 1300 all the way to 2020 and every 4 sims days resemble a year, that means that in total, if you want to complete this challenge, you are gonna have to play for 2,880 sim days. That is a lot. If you're gonna keep track of your playthrough in this Notion template, every single time you complete a day in The Sims, you will be able to tick it as complete. I will show you how to do that on the decades page later, but this way you will be able to keep track of which days are completed, so basically which ones you've played through and which ones are in progress and which ones you still have to play. From my perspective, this is the best way to track your progress in this challenge, because every single decade has so many rules and exceptions and extra additional things. This is basically the only quantifiable part that I could put as a tracker of how much you've completed for this challenge. Then if you scroll right below that, you will actually find 2 very important tables. You will find the table with all the decades, so these are all the different decades that you'll play through as you're playing through this entire challenge, and you will be able to see all of the sims that you've created, because this is one of those challenges where if you play it extensively and you have side households and everything, you are going to have so many sims to keep track of that I wanted to make sure to create a really intuitive overview of all of the sims that are in this playthrough, basically. These sims are organized by decade so that you can more quickly find the sim that you are looking for. And of course, in every database in Notion, there's a little search button, so you can also click here and then search for a specific name. This is our test sim that I've created. His name is Jack, and his profile picture is my cat. But I wanted to make sure that we had a test sim so that I could show you basically what it will look like in working with this template. But just know that here you'll be able to see all of your sims. You can give them a picture and all their information, and this way you can hopefully keep track of all of your sims more easily. Now that we've covered the home dashboard, I think it is actually time to dive into this decade page, because like I said, that's going to be your main companion as you're playing through the challenge. So once you start up your game and you're ready to play, what you're going to do is you're going to basically start with the Middle Ages. This is automatically marked as the decade that you're playing through. If you decide to start in another decade, I'll show you in a second how you can change your current decade that you're playing. If you click that, it will automatically open a full page. And like I said, this is your main companion, so you're going to be spending a lot of time on this page on your playthrough. If you get here, there are a couple of things that you'll immediately see. You'll see the title of the Middle Ages, and then right below it, you see a little button that says View Details. If you click on that, it will open behind my camera, so I'm just gonna drag it out so you can still see it. Well, basically what will happen is you're gonna get some details. You're gonna get a description of this decade. You're gonna get an overview of all the sims that are linked to this specific decade, and you're gonna get an overview of all the events that you're gonna run into in this decade. If you want to close this, you can just click the button up here and it will go away. I recommend that you, as soon as you click this for the first time, actually click on the View Details and you read the little description, because that gives you a bit of context of what the age is that you're going to be playing through. Right below that, you have a button that will tell you to go back to the dashboard. If you click that, you will immediately end up at that home dashboard again. I can recommend using the button instead of trying to, sometimes, like, especially if you're used to using Notion, you might want to use the breadcrumb route, but then you're going to actually end up in the core databases section, because I'm basically linking to a page in one of the databases. So if you use the breadcrumb route, that will not be great. I cannot recommend it. I can recommend using the back to dashboard button. Then you have the tick that says currently playing. This is the tick that you can tick or untick to basically have that one or maybe multiple. If you're going wild and you're playing multiple ages at the same time, you can actually tick them and then they will show up in the currently playing section on your main dashboard. You can also see what years you're playing through. So the Middle Ages are the 1300s all the way to the 1400s. And then right below that is where your day table is. And your day table, like I said, is going to be the main space that you will be spending time on. Right now, it's very empty. However, as you're playing through this challenge, this one will fill up. I'm going to walk you through all the columns that you see because I think it's important to give you some context. So the first column is the status. This is where you can actually tick off a day as either in progress or done. If it's done, it basically means that the day has passed in The Sims and you've moved on to the next day. This is also the status that will influence that progress bar on the home dashboard. Here you can also see the number. This is the number of Sims days. So this is your first day in game, your second day in game, your third day in game, your fourth day in game, etc. I recommend that you get yourself in a little routine if you're playing through this challenge to every single time that your sim goes to bed or every single time the clock marks 12 a.m., you tick the day off in this dashboard because that's going to allow you to not forget or like lose count basically. Then you can also see the day of the week. This should hopefully help you a little bit in keeping track if you do lose count. Every single time that you start a sim save, the week will automatically start on the Monday, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. In my game, it does. This might be setting dependent. If it is, you might have to go and change this, which could be a little bit frustrating because you would have to change it for 2,880 days in the source table. So I'm sorry if your game starts on a Sunday. I tried to do my research, and from what I found, The Sims actually starts on a Monday on the calendar, but let me know if that's not the case for you, because then I might be able to make a version where it starts on Sunday for you so that you guys don't have to worry about it. But basically, you'll be able to see which day it will be in The Sims, and then you can see the year, and as you can see, I've automatically set it up to have the sort of sequence of every 4 days is 1 year. So every 4 days is the next year, etc. Something that is important here is that if you are playing the Ultimate Decades Challenge, they give you this 4-day cycle as an advice, and then they tell you if you want to deviate from it, you're gonna have to do your own calculations. I stuck to the recommended 4 days in this template because I think it actually makes a lot of sense, and it is a very reasonable amount to play through. The biggest part here is that your seasons are not gonna line up correctly. Aging in The Sims is going to be a little bit whack. Also, if you deviate from it, you would have to completely adjust this tracker. So I would recommend that you play with the 4-day span, with the unfortunate side effect that your aging and your seasons are a bit off, and you're gonna have to just basically live with that. That's the downside of this challenge in general, not just a template. But if you do want to play with custom aging, you're gonna have to need some Notion knowledge to translate that into the master database and actually recalculate all of the days. If you want to do that, that's completely up to you, but I won't be offering any support for people that want to do alternate year spans basically. So in my template, also for both of the versions of the challenge, so both the earlier years as well as the later years, I've continued the setup of 4 in-game days equals 1 year. After that, you will basically see all the life stages of a sim. This is where you are going to link your sim to let yourself know or remember yourself when a sim is aging up. Every single time a sim is born, you do a dice roll to determine if they're going to live through that phase of their life. And if they are, you will know when they age up based on the aging table. The aging table is linked below here. It's also in the main cheat sheets. So just so you know, in case you're like, oh, how am I supposed to remember that? It is over here. Don't worry. You'll always be able to refer to it. I also can recommend reading the original rules very thoroughly before you actually start playing through this challenge. But basically, if your sim is born, you can say that on day 1 in 1301, your sim was born, and then you have to create the sim first. So you have to go onto the main dashboard and select create a sim, add their information that you want. And then as soon as you've done that, you can actually link them over here. Of course, this list now consists of only 1 sim because I've only created 1 test sim for the purpose of this video. But if you have a long list of sims and you're like, I don't want to scroll and find them, you can actually just start typing and it will start searching for you. Again, every single time that you have a sim, you're gonna roll a dice. You're gonna, it's gonna tell you if they're gonna live through the next life stage, so you'll know when they're gonna age up. In this case, Jack is a baby on the first day of 1301, and Jack is actually gonna age up into an infant on the 3rd day. And then they are gonna age up into a toddler on the 6th day. And then they actually age up into a kid on the 9th day. This is basically how this table works. So this is how you're gonna keep track of when your Sims are aging up and like how they are aging through the years, basically, all the way until they're an elder. The events in these years are empty. So there's no special events in this year. This is basically the years that you're playing through here are just simple playthroughs. There's like no special rules. There's nothing apart from the general era rules, like the general rules that come with the Middle Ages. So I've linked the time-specific rules and the time-specific build by if it was there on this page as well. So basically these years have nothing special to them. It's just you playing through as you would normally play The Sims with the rules given for this era. You can also see the journal entries here. So as you can see, I've actually added a journal entry called Day 1 because that was my journal entry about Day 1, and you can link it over here. The notes one is unfortunately a column that I cannot delete. Notion always needs one column of empty text. That's just how Notion works. So I cannot delete it, but I've called it notes. So just in case you're playing through it and you're like, I want to remember to harvest my crops on this day or something, you can make a little note for yourself so that if you're playing through it can function as like a little reminder for yourself. Just know that this column is technically the page name. So if there is ever a time where you want to refer to this day is now called Harvest Crops. It's not ideal. It's also, if you click on it, it will be opening the page and you can actually see that it now says Harvest Crops. I wouldn't recommend opening days in this view, to be honest, because it's not necessary. Obviously, Notion isn't necessarily built to make Sims legacy trackers. So sometimes I have to get a little bit creative with the features of Notion to sort of make it fit the mold of what I'm trying to do. I just want to let you guys know how this works so that you guys can take it into account when you're actually going to use this tracker to play through the challenge. Now that you know on your main playthrough dashboard how to link journal entries and how to add Sims, which again, you need to add first with the quick button on the home dashboard, you will also see that you can now only see 10 days. I've set it up in a way that this overview only shows the next 10 days. So if I mark this day as done, as you will see, it will disappear. Keep that in mind. Also, if you still need to add Sims on certain days, make sure that you wrap up the admin for the day before you mark it as done. But as soon as you mark it as done, you can see that day number 11 already pops up. If you are doing a dice roll for a Sim and you're like, I want to actually add their name to, them turning into a young adult somewhere further down the line into the future, you can actually click on load more here and it will automatically load the next 50 days as well. If you click off of this page, it will go back to the 10 next ones. So it won't always stay a very long list. So if you go back to the dashboard here, and then you click on the Middle Ages again, as you can see, it will show the next 10 ones. So you can safely click on load more and not worry about your main page getting a bit messed up. Then, as you saw when I actually loaded the next days, you can see that somewhere over here, there is an event linked. So the creator of this challenge has basically made it so that in some specific years, you will run into a special event, and this special event will have separate rules or like a dice roll that you need to do with a little bit of an explanation. So on your 57th Sim Day, which is the year 1315, there is the Great Famine. The Great Famine actually lasted for multiple years, so it will be linked to all the relevant years. If you click on this, you're going to have to click on it and then click again. It will open a page where you can see that the Great Famine actually happens in 1315, 1316, and 1317, and it explains an explanation of what you're supposed to do. I linked it this way so that if you're playing through this challenge, you don't have to remember when events happen. They will just show up on your timeline as soon as you get to that year, and then as soon as you get to day 57, it will actually be all the way up here and you will be able to see that there is an event. You can click on it and you can see what you need to do. I have created all the events for the entire challenge and I've linked them to all the appropriate places. Something that is important to know is that with that change of, going from one creator to the next creator to have the whole challenge, is that it slightly changes if you get to the later years. So from the Middle Ages all the way to the First Industrial Revolution is basically written by the same person. At the end of the First Industrial Revolution into the 20th century, we actually go into basically the original Decades challenge that was written by the original creator. If you click on this, you'll notice that every year is gonna have a specific event linked to it. That's because the creator of the basically later years of this challenge has a different setup. So it's not like the events are linked to specific years sprinkled throughout a big period of time, but they basically say that every decade, hence the name the Decades Challenge, has a subset of rules. So there is a main set of rules that will go basically for all of the years that you're gonna play after 1900. So I've added those on the main card, but then basically from 1900 all the way to 1909, you're gonna be in the Edwardian era. And because the Edwardian era has its own subset of rules, I've just linked it to basically everything so that you can quickly see every single day. You can like refer back to the rules, because normally you would be able to refer back to the rules over here. As it's a bit different of a setup, again, I had to get creative, and I hope that this setup makes sense. Over here, you can also see that in 1910, you actually switch decades. So you go into World War I and women's suffrage. And then if you click that, you can open it. And again, it will give you the things. Every single time you have a decade and it says all rules from the 1900s still apply with the following changes, I've made sure to add a quick link to the previous decade, basically the one that they are referring to over here. So you can quickly click it and get to those rules. And the same goes for here, so you can click back. This is the first one from the new creator, or like from the second creator. So here there's no backlink because they don't refer to older rules. Again, I'm hoping that all of this makes sense. It was a lot of information that I try to condense into one table and one layout. Now that you have seen the decades or the age page, which I feel like is the primary place where you are going to be spending time, I think it might also be good to take a look at your Sims card, because one of the things about this challenge is that you keep immaculate track of what your Sim is doing throughout life. You keep track of when they die, when they age up, when they, like, where they're buried, who they're married to, etc. And I have tried to create, again, an intuitive Sim card that you can use to not only link your Sims in the original table on the Decades card, but also for you to keep track of all the information that you want to know about them. So what you do is, as soon as you create a card, you can give them a name. This can be, we can call this Sim Jack Black. Why not? Let's go for it, because I think it's useful if you give them a first and last name, because that way it's easier for you to find them and also distinguish your Sims if you have like repeating names throughout your legacy. If you have repeating names throughout your legacy, let's say that like 5 generations down, there's going to be another Jack Black. You could even, if you wanted to, add their year of birth into their name so you can distinguish them if you're doing like the drop-down list and you're trying to search for them later down the line. That's just a little tip if you plan on having repeating family names. Then right below there is something that is like basic info. You can just write a little backstory here. If there is like anything in particular that you would want to write down about this Sim, something that you might want to remember for later, you can go in here and write it down. You can also add their gender or pronouns. Just keep in mind that actually until quite late in the 20th century, pronouns, or actually just in general like gender acceptance, wasn't a very big thing. I mean, we're still fighting it in this day and age, so it is still unfortunately not as normalized as it should be. I have added in here because it is a feature in The Sims. It is kind of up to you how realistic you want to play with this. If you want to create Sims that feel more true to you and you want to give them pronouns even in the earlier days, feel free, but just know that this challenge does tell you to not create pronouns basically, or like use other than the 2 binary pronouns up until like quite late into the challenge. I have by default set up the 3 default ones that are in The Sims, but if you want to create any pronouns, if you want to create mixed pronouns, or if you want to create neo-pronouns, anything, you can just type them in here and then hit enter. So you can go for she, they if you feel comfortable with that, and then hit enter and it will automatically add it as an option. So this is completely up to you. You can also delete them if you make a mistake. You can change the color, etc. But I just wanted to let you know that's how it works. I have added it to the Sims card, but this challenge does sort of request you to not add them until later down the line. You have a thing where you can add a portrait, which is where you can add a picture of your sim. You can add multiple pictures, so you could add portraits of every single life stage. I believe the one that is at the top is the one that will show at the card over here. You can use this little context menu to drag the other one to the top. Let's say that you want to have the most recent portrait of your sims at the top so that it can show at the character card over here. Then you can give them their traits. I have not added all the traits into this list because that would mean that every single time there is an expansion pack and there are new traits, I'm going to have to update this template. And like I just showed you with the pronouns, it is super easy to add all the traits in here. So you can just type that they are cheerful over here and hit enter, and then it will add it as a trait for the next time. This means that you can also add modded traits, that you can add reward traits or anything from your sim without me having to set it all up and having to continuously update it. Right below that is the world of residence. Just like the traits, I haven't set up the entire list, but you can easily add a world by just typing it and hitting enter, and then it's in the list for all the next times that you want to use it. The decade is basically just the list of all the decades that you will find. So let's say that Jack lived in the Middle Ages. As soon as you link him here to the decade, that's when you will also see him show up in that like detail overview that I showed earlier, where you can see the description of a decade, where you can see which sims lived in that decade and where you can see which events happen in that decade. By linking it here, that's how he will show up in that section. They have a status which can be alive, which can be dead but a playable ghost, or dead but no ghost in the sense that you've released the ghost or it's not a playable ghost. Then you can write the age of death. This is basically just a number. Like I said, you're gonna have to do all the calculations and like the age conversion yourself. You'll be able to calculate how old your sim was when he died, and you can register that over here. You can write which life stage they died in. So as soon as you do a death roll with a dice and it tells you that they need to die as a teen, you can write it over here. You would need mods for being able to let kids and toddlers and stuff die. If that's not your cup of tea, then basically you are going to have to get a bit creative with your playthrough, because then sims can only die as soon as they turn into teens. But I would recommend downloading mods or being open to just deleting sims if you feel comfortable just deleting them in cast, and you won't have a grave, but that way you can let them die, quote unquote. Because especially in the earlier ages, it makes a lot of sense that a lot of sims actually don't get past the very young ages because they get sick for whatever reason. You can also add the cause of death. This is just an empty field. This is not like a drop down, so you can just write swarm of flies. The reason I've kept this like this is because I can imagine that if you're gonna go into storytelling, that you also might come up with deaths that are not actually in the game. So you might be able to say that they died of the measles or the smallpox or in a specific event that happens, and then I want you to just be able to write it over here as a free field. And you can add which world they are buried in. So this is basically just the same as the world of residence. If you have a specific graveyard for this playthrough, you can actually add which world they are buried in, so that if you want to find their grave for later generations, you'll actually be able to basically backtrack where their grave is. Because trust me, if you play through this whole challenge, you're gonna have a lot of graves. Then, as you can see, we have the life stages, and here there are numbers that are already filled. You don't have to fill these. These fill automatically based on where you link that sim in the table, like the day table that I showed you on the decades card. This is just for you to keep track of how they aged throughout time, and it's just like an information section. But again, you don't have to edit this. You can't even edit it. It's like a link, so you can't even add anything in here. It just automatically updates as soon as you link the sim on the decades card. Then there's a section that says no need to open or edit. That's just a very nasty Notion part. Like, please ignore this. This is just the page links to like the relation between the pages so that this overview got created. But again, you don't need to open it. You don't need to edit it. Please don't touch it. You will break the template. Just enjoy the fact that this updates automatically and pretend that you don't see this, okay? And then right below that, you can actually see journal entries. If you have a journal entry, you can actually link a sim to it. So if I wanted to, I could search and I could actually say, hey, you know what? Day 1 was actually written by Jack, because Jack is the only sim that's alive at this point. So now you can actually see that this journal entry was written by Jack. That, again, if you're a storyteller, is one of those features that will allow you to keep track of your Sims' stories and backstories, and will also allow you to potentially add multiple journal entries to a single day, but maybe you're journaling from different perspectives of your Sims. Speaking of the journal entries, because we've now covered the entire sim card, although if you want to add more things, basically this card is yours. You can add whatever you want to your heart's content. You can add more pictures, you can add a table, you can add info, like whatever you want to add. This entire page is yours. And if you want to add things in Notion, you can just type a / and it will bring up all the building blocks that are existing in Notion. So whatever you want, go ham, create wild character cards if that's something that you enjoy. But like I said, you can also open the journal pages, and a journal page is relatively simple. For the journal page, I would recommend that you write the title, just day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. Of course, you can go day 3, colon, and then write whatever you want to write as the title. But by adding the day that you want to link it to later, it's going to just be so much easier to find it in the drop-down menu on the decades card for you to be able to link it to the right day. Then you can actually add a sim. So let's say that Jack wasn't linked to this. You can click on it and you can just click Jack Black. From here, you can also click back to the character card. And from here, you can click back to the journal entry. So you can basically go back and forth. Then you can see who it's written by. So you link that manually. And then the decade, the year, and the day are all automatically updated based on how you link it on the decades card. So the thing that I showed you earlier, if you are like on your day-to-day decades card and you are playing through day 2, and maybe let's say that you want to link this one over here as well. Now, day 1 is also linked to day 2, very confusing. Now that you've done that and you click on this, you can actually see that it's linked to day 1 and day 2. So if you're a person who would like to journal every 7 days or something and just link it to all the 7 days prior, you can do that as well. It will still show you the correct decade and all of the individual years that you've journaled in. And I think with that, I have actually explained the entire challenge. I've explained the entire dashboard. I think I should have covered everything that I wanted to cover. So that means that this template is now yours to enjoy. I genuinely hope that this will help you play through the Decades Challenge because it is such a phenomenal challenge. There is so many fun things in here, all the events, all the decades. The people who wrote this challenge really poured their heart into it, and it is absolutely noticeable. And I hope that you will notice me pouring my heart into this tracker so that you can enjoy your playthrough even more. Like I said, it is linked in my shop down below. However, this template is completely free. So basically you can just add it to your basket, check out, and then you will get a download link. And then you will need to follow that first step of duplicating it to your workspace. And once that is done, it is all yours to enjoy. If you like this video, if you like this template, please toss it a cheeky like. This one actually took forever to make, so you helped me out a ton by liking this video because then YouTube knows that this is a good video to push to other people as well. If you want to do me an extra favor, feel free to comment your favorite feature or the thing that you're most excited about in this template because again, commenting helps with engagement and it helps push this video. Other than that, feel free to check out my channel. If this is the first time that you see a video of mine, I have a bunch more videos on anything The Sims, from tutorials for building to mods to CC to more Notion trackers for challenges to my own Let's Play of my self-written legacy challenge called the Pack Legacy Challenge. And if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone!